So this is a good time to talk about parts work. An example of parts work is the internal family systems model, a very growing behavior change modality that recognizes that we have these different parts of us that awaken in response to very specific external stimuli. So we might have an angry part when someone cuts us off in traffic. We might have an addict part when I'm feeling dysregulated. So when I get those triggers, and I have had ridiculous triggers, I have had triggers to put on a disguise, cover up my tattoos, glasses, mustache, and go to a strip club, and for the love of God, just have some fucking fun again. What I now know, though, is when I get those triggers, that part is trying to help me alleviate discomfort, pain, stress, anxiety, fear.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin End.
And I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my man, Coach Craig. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man, so great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. Dude, I'm excited. I like what you're doing. It's a really unique take on coaching men's mental health as well, because I know that this topic is probably going to be near and dear to a lot of people, whether they're our listeners or friends of our listeners. So without further ado, Craig, can you please share a bit of who you are, what you do, and how you're doing it?
Sure. Thank you. So I like to start with, I was a piece of shit husband, if I may curse. Is that okay?
You may do whatever you want.
Yeah, a piece of shit husband. I was selfish. I was narcissistic. I was abusive in my lies and gaslighting. And since I was a child, I always had this secret sexual life. I was touched by an older neighborhood boy, exposed to porn at a young age. In contrast with the shame around sexuality, I got the Catholic way. Sex is dirty and disgusting, and you save it for someone you love.
Amen.
And yeah, amen. Thank you. And so, those secrets proliferated, and I always thought it would go away. And, blessed to have a fairly decent IQ, successful on the outside, attorney, great law school, big firm, better job. And throughout my marriage, this dark part of me would continue to grow. It was my coping strategy. It was how I emotionally regulated. It's how I got significance and attention, and I started paying for it. I picked up women on the street, like some abhorrent behavior. And I had been in traditional counseling and therapy for almost 20 years. And I had been in sex addiction treatment. And to varying degrees of success. I had many of those big cathartic moments because there was a lot of trauma to unpack, but I never learned what to do about that. And 15 years ago, I had my worst meltdown that I've ever had in my life after, years of therapy, years of treatment. And I'm not blaming anybody. It's all on me. I want to be clear about that. But I had my worst meltdown after all that work. I was in a shitty job. I hated. I moved cross country and I just sabotaged the whole thing. I sunk so low. I got fired because work clearly knew something was wrong with me. I was addicted to the chemical bath salts. If you ever heard of the thing that makes people crazy and people eat each other's faces. I'm the kind of guy who reads an article in the New York Times about how bad it is. And fuck the man. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's legal. I can go buy it. How bad could it be? Well, yeah, 3 weeks later, I'm drooling down the side of my mouth. There's neurological damage. I'm out of my mind. I'm having sex with a trans escort and I want to marry her. And I am fucking out of my gourd. And I stick my face in a pile of bath salts, tried to hurt myself. My psychiatrist said, you have two choices. Either you go by yourself right now from this office, or I 5150 you. That's, mandatory hold. And I did my inpatient. I got out and I get my prescription of what I needed to do, more counseling, more therapy, more meetings. And I just knew guys, I just knew like I couldn't do the same thing again. I couldn't do the same thing again. And I found a therapist who didn't subscribe to the disease-based model, sex addiction and porn addiction, leveraging a 90-year-old model for the complexities of human sexuality. And so that ultimately he hired me, kind of a crazy story. He saw that I had a gift in helping people, and I had this executive background in training. Like, we would train the company. So I had people with PhDs on my staff helping me build this training for thousands of people, and there were metrics and there were deliverables and there were developmental milestones, and there was none of that in my therapy and in my treatment. And I had this vision very, very early on when I started helping people that I could build a better mousetrap. And that's when I discovered parts work. And that's when I started applying, mindfulness to my compulsivity. And slowly over time, I've evolved this curriculum called the Mindful Habit System. And it sounds crazy because every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a modality these days, but like, I do train it to counselors and therapists, and they pay me, good money for that training, and they get a lot of value from it because it's practical. And anyway, to make a long story short, I am here born of my failures. And in the past 13 years, I've worked with clients in 30 countries. I've worked with some of the most successful men on the planet. Unfortunately, because of confidentiality, I toil in obscurity, but really had the privilege of working with some uber successful men who did lots of therapy, lots of treatment, and finally found results with us. Yeah, man, it's a great privilege to help guys at that low point. People come to me when they just got caught, and all that rationale that they had for their behaviors shown under the light of day is like, oh, what am I doing? Like, this is the hill I'm risking my family on. So yeah, I'll stop talking and love to answer any questions you guys have.
Yeah, this is so much deeper than the overview that we got before the podcast here. That kind of changes my entire perspective of framing of what I was going to say here. The people that come to you, I imagine it's at the point where it's just they've tried everything under the sun. It's complete desperation at this point. And I know, obviously, the main goal would be to not get to that point, to not get to that last act. Is there any advice that you can give that people are currently living this type of lifestyle that's teetering, that's continuing to play with their dark side and, haven't gotten caught yet, that are, listening to this podcast? 95% of our listeners are entrepreneurs, are business owners, or transitioning into that, which, I'm not saying that those are more likely to be those types of candidates, but I mean, let's face it, they have more freedom, more money, more liability. So is there any advice that you can give right here and there?
Yeah. And what one of my goals, guys, is to stop. Like, I'm almost sick of talking about sex addiction and porn addiction, because that implies it's reached a certain line of compulsivity that's causing significant damage in the person's life. So what I want to say, and you have to ask yourself this question, men, is your sexual energy a powerful evolutionary force? Do you believe in, Darwinian evolution? Well, if you do, then we're talking about one of the most powerful forces in human nature. And when your sexual health is screwed up, your physical health often is, certainly your mental health is, and your spiritual health is, whatever that means to you. So sexual health touches all of these. So when you're wasting that powerful energy on thirst traps, on watching other people have sex, watching shit that you're just not going to do, that your wife isn't going to do, well, that has an impact. And you have to prioritize sexual health as a man. And I don't think there's ever been a time in history where that message needs to get out there. Don't wait for rock bottom. It gets worse. Trust me. Trust me. When I tell you, listen, if my clients went public, 3 of them, legends, titans, and icons, these are people that you would see, you're 1%, and you would so admire them and you so respect them for their accomplishments and their hard work. This does not discriminate, especially if you got money and you got time. OnlyFans, cam girls, sugar baby sites, which is just glorified prostitution. very few Birka bags being exchanged. Right? It's transactional. And you can lose yourself in that really, really fast because it comes natural to us. We're wired for it. We're wired for variety. We're wired to be visually stimulated. So
I just want to, I want to hear the counterpart too, because it's obvious, but I feel like it needs to be said, especially by Coach Craig. By getting rid of those, everything, the porn, the strip clubs, the cam girls, everything that you just mentioned, what do I get?
Yeah, I think you get freedom.
Does that come right away? Does it come with is it, because I can't imagine immediate satisfaction. I can't imagine
immediate misery and suffering. Immediate misery and suffering.
This is what I wanted. So the cold turkey aspect, you're going cold turkey, you're getting off of the drug, you're getting off of the dopamine, whatever it's a visual dopamine or a mental dopamine, right? Walk me through this. What am I getting? What am I chasing after? I think it just needs to be verbalized, because obviously it's in the head. It's bliss. It's a better relationship. But is that it? How long does it take to get there?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because a lot of people. So cold turkey is dangerous for some people, meaning that this behavior, when you some programs have people write up how bad it is. What is this costing you in money and time and in future success? If you get divorced, price that out, what that's going to cost you. That's amateur hour. Okay. What I want them to do is tell me the good parts of their behavior. And when they start exploring the good parts of their behavior, and you just take a guy who's compulsively using porn, it provides an escape. It brings immediate and intense pleasure and enjoyment, relieves stress, excitement and anticipation, a rush, allows him to enjoy other women without cheating. He followed on social media, so this guy had a connection with him. It helps him relax, gives him something to look forward to, and it's mine. It's one of the things that I can go to after dealing with all other responsibilities. And I'm reading his assignment right now, work, family, etc. It's mine, like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. It's his precious.
Interesting.
And so for some people, they're so dysregulated that stopping porn, masturbation, orgasm abruptly can actually be damaging to their mental health. I'm not saying most people, but I'm saying some people, and everybody's on that spectrum, because this is a coping strategy. When it becomes compulsive, it's a coping strategy. It's serving you. It's a solution that has gone amok. And helping people understand that, I think, is very important, because in the beginning, it's going to suck. You are losing that coping strategy. But what you're gaining, or at least typically people who are in, compulsive negative sexual behavior, freedom from shame, self-control. You begin to prioritize that powerful force inside you. Sexual health becomes a priority, not because you're a sex addict, because you're a goddamn man, and it needs to be important, because left amok, it goes to really, really bad places. So you feel better about yourself. You have more self-control. If you're in a relationship, that energy is now flowing towards your partner. So you've got a better connection. There's more intimacy, a stronger bond. So the gains are significant. And you have to develop the skill set to regulate stress, anxiety, and fear, flight, fright, fight, freeze, or fawn. Those are great skill sets that add tremendous value in every area of your life.
I'm so glad that you said that, because that's so much more than what I was picturing in my head. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what were you picturing in your head?
Well, I was picturing bliss, a better relationship, a better marriage. Like, it was very singular, but instead it was more about me. It was about me making, a better me, better outcomes, better opportunities. Yes, better relationships, but it just sounds like it's just, I'm not distracted with, all this other crap, and I'm refocused in on myself and the things that really matter to me.
Yeah, I love that. You know, one of the things that I've come to learn, even from just doing like reading of some amazing people, like for anybody who's read Think and Grow Rich, there is a whole chapter on, you know, conserving your sexual energy, utilizing it as the most powerful energy to be able to get things done, to bring energy and enthusiasm into your job, into your life. You know, what is it? Specific like retention. I forgot
Yeah,
the
sexual
technical term.
transmutation. It's
There you
chapter
go.
11, intimately familiar. That chapter changed my life then because it was the first time after 20 years of sex addiction treatment where I saw sex being talked of something in the positive.
Right.
And I connected with power.
Yeah.
I was an attorney. I was an executive, want to be in control, want to lead versus surrendering and powerless. I get it. And listen, those are powerful concepts, surrendering to the reality that I need help. I can't control, like, I get that, but that's not where I wanted to stay. So that chapter was very impactful for me.
So I love what you're doing, particularly because I have had conversations with a lot of my guy clients around this. I think society is doing a horrible job by continuously promoting sex everywhere through the acceptance of OnlyFans, through enhanced and easier ways to get porn. Like I keep seeing ads on my Facebook for AI girlfriends. I don't even know what the hell that's about, right? And so I think that men especially struggle a lot more with this than women.
Yep.
And we're coming into this age now that I think it's becoming really, really dangerous for men. Like, how do men really start getting maybe a first step or a better handle on this? Like, we could chat more about this because I know there's a lot of things that I've recommended, but I'm super curious. Like, what would maybe an action step be that you would give to a guy who's struggling right now?
Yeah, it would be to start asking themselves if it's healthy. Just start asking themselves, is it healthy? Start challenging that narrative that this is normal, men spending their hard-earned money to pretend have a relationship who's outsourced to chatting to some third world country. It's a sham. The whole thing's a sham. And it's all there to take our money, to take our power, make us feel like we're accomplishing something. And you guys know, right? You've seen the thirst traps. Finely tuned marketing machines. This is an industry bigger than every major sports teams combined. There are major financial partners, this world institutions investing in this industry, hiding it. There are people out there who investigate. We're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they know exactly what they're doing. They know how long people are watching, how long they go back, and people are losing their shit. So start asking yourself, is this healthy? And can I be healthier? Versus this all or nothing. And I get all or nothing. Like again, prioritizing sexual health. Is this healthy? And you start challenging that narrative that, and by the way, the AI girlfriend market is valued today at 3. Ready? You know what I think? You know where it's going to come after 3?
Trillion.
You might think 3 billion.
Oh.
Today.
I'm shocked it's not more, to be honest.
Well, it's growing fast.
It's that old 1950 billboard that was on there, that sex sells. It hasn't changed. I mean, guys are guys and girls are girls, and we like things to, actually look at. My question to you is, now that you've been in recovery and now that are continuing in recovery, I presume, because I don't think it ever stops.
Right.
How do you fight urges? Right. You're going through this and you finally found something that works. What is like and I'm sure you coach this and teach this, but how do you personally just fight off an urge to, I guess the simple one is to look at porn or to, do something like that.
Right. So I don't fight, I lead. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So when I get an urge, when that addict part awakens, and there's been some difficult challenges here lately. I lost a client, died. I was on the phone talking to his wife 2 hours after the guy croaked and her saying, thank you. There's been a lot of stressful things going on. Right. And in the work, whatever. And I protect my bubble. is, Shane, give me that question again. I was right there and I lost it. Ask me that question again, please.
How do you fight an urge?
Fight an urge. I do not fight an urge. I lead an urge. So this is a good time to talk about parts work. So parts work is an example of parts work is the internal family systems model, a very growing behavior change modality that recognizes that we have these different parts of us that awaken in response to very specific external stimuli. So we might have an angry part when someone cuts us off in traffic.
Right.
We might have an addict part when I'm feeling dysregulated. So when I get those triggers, and I have had ridiculous triggers, I have had triggers to put on a disguise, cover up my tattoos, glasses, mustache, and go to a strip club. And for the love of God, just have some fucking fun again. Right? I've had that trigger.
Right.
And, all sorts of nefarious ways to hide money so I can do, back to my addiction. What I now know, though, is when I get those triggers, that part is trying to help me alleviate discomfort, pain, stress, anxiety, fear. So I'm able to translate that trigger instead of, hearing the words, let's go look at porn. Let's go call somebody. Maybe that escort's still around. Hope not, 14 years later, but maybe, you never know, right? And I translate that as I need something. Mm-hmm. I'm off. I'm dysregulated. Mm. I'm sad. I'm hurt. Mm. I'm upset. I made a mistake. Whatever that real feeling is. So I'm able to translate because I know, and that's what parts work teaches us, that these parts that have been demonized, and just using a 12-step, diseasified. What do you want to do with disease? You want to kill it. Well, guess what? You will always lose in a fight against yourself. That part has been meeting needs since childhood. Yeah. You have been using sex to escape discomfort from childhood. So when I experience discomfort, surprise, surprise, no matter how far in recovery you go, and that was the other important thing for me, these addict parts, liar part, shame part, they are going to awaken. And the parts work gives you a framework through this concept of self-leadership. Just like in a business, you have your direct reports. So parts work says, hey, there's a pretty natural external system of leadership. Let's apply it internally. And that center, that core, self-energy, self-leadership, your conscious, your, Christians might say their Holy Spirit, whatever that center is, it's that leadership. And so that's how I respond when I get a trigger. I meet that need proactively so it doesn't get met reactively.
That's the main difference between hiring a coach and gaining that mental guidance there to fight off impulses. Because when you're impulsive and you just are a doer and you just act compared to thinking, I think that's what you get from the actual coaching.
Well, and you run away, right? You're running away and stuff it down. Don't do it. Bad, disease. And when you're running away, you're violating the old adage, that which you resist persists.
I'm curious on what you think about, and because you've been doing this for quite some time, why are men wired differently than women? And I'm not saying all women, but the vast majority here. Why do men carry this deep down inside? We push that demon inside and then have to battle that comparatively to women. Just generally curious in your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's our evolutionary history. Virtually every other mammal, but few, is wired to procreate and spread their seed. It's why it's one of the most pleasurable, connecting and bonding experience. So that's in us. And there's no ritual of growth around it anymore. There's mostly shame around it. And in the places where they're trying to talk about it, they're also saying it also promotes sex trafficking. So the kids don't want to, be open and honest and vulnerable. And listen, it is impactful. There was a study done in the UK, women 18 to 25, 30% increase in 5 years of women being slapped, choked, spit on, and hit. Where do you think guys are learning that?
Yeah.
You know exactly where they're learning it. Porn. Mm-hmm. So it's bleeding over.
Right.
Yeah, it's a dark time for men.
Right.
We're lonely. We feel disempowered. You know, maybe not your audience, but, you know, a lot of others, you know, feel disempowered. They're not in control of their lives. They don't, you know, they're, you know, you guys know, right? There's a...
Yeah. Well, I think, and it's an interesting thing, right? Because especially in today's world, men have a very different standard that they need to hit. It's harder nowadays to be a guy. You have so much more responsibility, more pressure, competition from the side of the women. You not only have to make a great living, but you have to out earn the woman, or she leads the family. Like, there's so many things that come into play, and I think that's why so many men are stuck in these, I call them dopamine cycles. I'm sure you would agree with that, but that's why they're stuck in these dopamine cycles, because they can't get a woman. You know, you see on the dating apps, right? I think the number nowadays, like 80% of the women go for 20% of the men. So you have an abundance of guys. They can't get matches. They can't find women. They're not making enough money. They can't date. They are not moving up in their careers. What do they have? They got video games and they got porn. And that's the only thing that's making them feel good, because when they play the video game, they get achievement. When they watch porn, they get connection. And you know that these are all the false things that they're looking for and meeting through vices as opposed to a good way. And so when you start looking at this and you really understand it for what it is, that they're just trying to meet a need, you know, what do we start doing to really help empower these men? So I like that you brought to light kind of asking, is this helping me? That's a great reframe. But what are some of these other things that men can maybe start doing to even just, I think a part of it is, right, just regaining control of their psyche, regaining control of, like, you're stronger than this. How can they start stepping into that too?
Yeah. And you guys know this answer. It is the ridiculously easiest answer, but it's where so many people overlook. You cannot control yourself sexually if you're not taking care of yourself. So we do this exercise in the beginning of the program. It's called the Fundamental 5, where I just check in: eating, sleeping, hydrating, exercising, and practicing mindfulness. The mindfulness thing is usually new, but everything else, it's almost always shit. It's almost always a mess. The sleep, especially for executives who are strung out, entrepreneur, doing the grind, used to those weird hours. So when you start creating small achievements in those areas, that self-care becomes self-esteem. And you create a culture of success in your life versus this constant cycle of failure. And we might even say, hey, let's put the porn aside. The porn is like, you need it now. You know, go to the doctor and start Xanax.
No, I get it.
Then he's like, no, I don't want to do the Xanax. Okay, well, we got to stabilize.
Right.
So it's low-hanging fruit and certainly critical for sustainability, right? If you're not taking care of yourself, it's just natural. If you don't do this, you're going to do that. So I want to drive that lesson home really, really early.
Rewiring and back to the basics.
And that also, that's a great point. I think what you're bringing up is massively overlooked so much of the time, Craig. Change has to happen incrementally, and what we know through the science of habit formation is that the barrier to entry to create change and change in behavior has to be minimal, because the bigger the barrier, the harder it is to actually get into that effective habit to create change. So I love that you even pointed out, hey, you're still going to watch porn, perhaps, depending on where you're at. You might actually need it. Hell, I might tell you, go ahead, go do it, because we have too much other shit to work on. And if you get rid of that, you're screwed. So how do you determine the nuances in going through this process of, like, when people should start giving up things or when they should keep it? Like, how do you really determine that?
Yeah, well, they determine it by their success or failures. So everybody starts the program. I ask them to look at their baseline, like, how often have you been doing it over the course of the past 3 months? Let's come up with an average. And for most people, that number has some value. For others, we got to pick something else. So we get a baseline. And they always set a goal of 0. And I'm like, awesome. I love 0. I admire your goal setting. And it's where I use the opportunity to introduce harm reduction and acknowledge that that's a great goal, but what if we had a plan B where you minimized it by 50%? Because in business, expenses or, profit, that's a huge win. That's a huge win. So it's so important. And that's one of the alternatives that I want to offer, because when you're in abstinence, when it's all or nothing, you are eliminating opportunity to maybe first separate the porn from the masturbation. Maybe you get rid of the visual first, because the guy's been jerking off for 30 years. And he wants to hold himself to that higher standard. He wants mastery of self. Good. I want to support that, but your way isn't working. It's all or nothing failure, all or nothing failure. So the variables that we might impact would be separate the porn from the masturbation. We might seek to impact frequency. Let's lower it. Okay, it was 6 times. What if we knocked it down to 3? And also severity. Severity can be how long he's watching it. Because what's the 3-minute bender versus 3 hours? Which one's more impactful? Obviously the 3 hours. So we might impact how long. And then we might impact what he's watching. And so what that does is that brings a conversation into, hey, you're doing it. I failed. I slipped again. I failed. Okay, well, what were you watching? How long was it happening? Where did your head go? And is there an opportunity to make it healthier? And that's so much more successful, because it's a capacity issue. The reality is that my high-performing clients do not have capacity to, drop to 0 right away. So that's one way we'd approach it.
Man, I love that. Shane, I'll let you go in 1 second. I just want to harp on this, because I see everything Craig is doing here, and I want to admire it, because I think that people don't understand what Craig's pointing out is time, frequency, intensity. And I've gotten the same thing from you, man, where I've heard clients say, there's been no change. I'm like, really? Have you noticed the time, the frequency, and intensity are all down? They'll be like, oh, well, I guess by that metric, there's change. But people have this concept of what you said, right? So for all you listeners, don't always be in a rush to get to 0. Like a win is going from an 8 to a 6 or a 5 or a 4 or whatever it needs to be. So I love that you said that, man. I think not enough people understand that winning is a process. Process that takes time. It is slow. It is gradual. So thank you for bringing that into this conversation. Shane, go ahead. I know you had something to say.
I feel like it's going to be a similar answer, but just in case, I wanted to try to relate to some of the listeners here. It's not that bad. I got it under control. That doesn't sound like me because I'm doing something completely different. Like, I'm sure these are the very typical answers. What do you have to say to things like that?
Well, let's accept the reality that there has to be somebody now, and they've done studies. They've done studies on which groups typically are helped by porn and which groups are harmed by porn. So the groups that were helped by it were LGBTQ, seeing themselves represented in media, right? That was helpful for them overall. They've done studies. People into kink. That was helpful for them. They saw the thing that they liked represented. The group, though, that consistently reports negative outcomes is men. And married men, the worst. Married men, do the worst. So let's be open to the reality that some people are fine with it, but ask yourself, are you hiding it? Or is it really bringing you joy? Do you agree that your sexual energy is powerful? And can you stop? And if you can't stop, then, maybe it's a problem. Because what happens, guys, is like, guys can't even orgasm anymore without jerking off, because they are so wired into that arousal mechanism. It can only be done this way. And their arousal template's been corrupted. When they're intimate with their partners, they have to think about something else in order to orgasm. Like, is that good for you? And if that's what you're doing, the answer is probably no. So I make room for the people where this is a harmless hobby, but it's still powerful. And how are you using that power? And do you think like this is masculinity? Like this is the position of the modern man? Like, come on. and you're hiding it and you're ashamed about it. Like, I don't know. I just don't think history is going to be very kind to this era where we allowed children to be exposed to violent, degrading pornography in their most developmental formative years, and no controls, no sexual health. Like, it's a shit show.
There's a few things that also really come to mind, because I think it's so important, is a lot of the people that tend to struggle with this, they struggle with having a really good, powerful perspective. I think every guy goes through an era where we're trying to figure out our sexuality, and somewhere it leads to porn. I mean, it's just inevitable, because all of a sudden we're getting exposed to it, and it was like, holy crap, this is cool. And wait, you mean I could get it in a magazine? Wait, I can just get it on my phone. I don't even need the magazine anymore. Hold on a second. I can have it anywhere. And it starts becoming like this easy thing. And every guy, myself included, I'm sure, has had an issue.
Didn't used to be that way though, Vin. You used to be like you had to go to your dad's, porno mags underneath this mattress, or where he put it and sneak him into it.
Playboy.
Or drive to a dirty bookstore, man. I had a fake ID at 16, not to buy booze, but so I could go to these shady, disgusting places that were dark. They smelled. There were creeps there, but
sticky.
Yeah, it definitely was sticky.
And see, now you don't have to do that. Now you have the luxury of this, which is even worse.
But I think this is where the mindfulness portion, I believe, comes into Craig's coursework, is because one of the biggest things that has helped me in overcoming issues with, looking at material that I don't want to be exposed to, was getting into a few things. One is like, I heard a quote I saw a video from Andrew Tate basically making fun of guys who masturbate. It's like, imagine all your ancestors staring down at you and they're just watching you like over the phone. Like, you look like an idiot. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you do. And then there was this other thing that I just thought of one day. And I don't know, it was this perspective of just seeing the world in a different light, of seeing each person for who they are. And I was like, man, that's somebody's daughter. That person grew up and they had hopes and dreams one day. Like, maybe they said they wanted to be a therapist or an astronaut, or they wanted to do something amazing. And now, like, this is their life. Like, that's actually kind of a sad thing if you think of it that way, and you stop dehumanizing them and just looking at an object of your pleasure. And I think when you start really building these powerful perspectives, it becomes almost impossible to sit there and watch that. And especially as you get older and you have kids, like, what if you placed your daughter's face over whatever actress you're watching? Would you still want to watch that? And if the answer is yes, you need more help than just talking to Craig or myself. But the answer is no, it might help you.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important perspective, using the trigger to objectify, to personify. See, I did an interview with world famous adult actress Jessie Rogers, and it's my most popular video on YouTube. She was sexually assaulted and violated in multiple scenes, and she left the porn industry. Now, financial struggles. She's back on OnlyFans. You should see the comments on the videos on my channel about her. But she said something I will never forget. She was talking about her STDs, getting her HIV testing, the misogyny in the porn industry, how the women are screwed, eaten up and chewed out after 6 months. And she said, there is no love in porn. And that, even though she went back to it, I have never forgotten that. That really, really stuck with me.
The crazy thing is that after she said that, she still went back because of the corruption and the greed and the lifestyle. Yeah. No, I've thought about reaching out to her, and, maybe she sees it as an opportunity, but it's not the right message, for my audience, but I am, naturally curious, but I'm sure it was financial reasons, 100%.
Yeah. Man, this has been such a phenomenally deep and insightful conversation, and I had a feeling it would be. That's why I wanted to bring you on the show. So we are coming close to the end, and I gotta make sure that I ask you our final few questions, man, because I'm curious on your views on this as well. One question is, our show is called the 1% Podcast, but not because of the fact that we are billionaires yet, but because of the fact that we believe that there is a 1% in everything in life. You could be a 1%er at whatever you want to be. There's a million different categories and a million ways to excel and be phenomenal. So our question to you is, with that in mind, what is your version of a 1% life?
Yeah, my version of a 1% life is self-control and meeting needs proactively. There's a quote that I love: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, and in that response lies our growth and our freedom. The 1% life for me is being aware of that pull and choosing to do something else. Freedom.
It's very tough to achieve that as well.
Ridiculously hard. I mean, listen, we're wired to focus on problems. We're wired to self-deprecate. We're wired to be, sexually aroused by everything that we're saturated. It is the hardest thing to do.
Right.
Yet, we're men. We do hard things.
Damn right. That's what it is.
The hammer at the end there too.
Boom.
Love it.
That is also one of my favorite things. I talk about that a lot with clients because of my background in behavioral therapy. And people think this a lot about change, is that it's complex. And I would always submit to people, and I would always say, it's not complex. It's actually very simple. But just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where people kind of give up. So I love that you said that. You talked on one of my favorite points. Craig, we could sit here all day. We just don't have the time, but I know we could, man. We're going to have to.
Well, have me back. I'd love to talk more.
So, okay. Next question for you. What is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever received? Could be life or business. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. The best piece of life that I ever received was all behavior is need-seeking behavior.
Ooh, elaborate.
Yep. Meaning that all of these bad habits, my anger, my shame, my addict part, they're all meeting needs. They're meeting needs the way they were trained to meet needs, the way they were trained to resolve to conflict, to lie about, because of my fear of getting in trouble, to, keep this secret sexual life. And understanding that yes, these parts evolved over time to meet needs. They're not doing it in the way that I need right now. And so I have to lead these parts to meet those needs proactively. And so that was that perspective, with years of trying to kill my disease and trying to, kill this part of me that was causing so much damage. Learning to lead that part was... And understanding that part was meeting needs and the childhood stuff, it gave me the container to put all that stuff. So understanding that has changed me profoundly.
I love it, man. Very true. Everything's an attempt to meet a need, but the way we go about meeting the need is what we need to be super conscious of.
That's
100%.
Right. That's right.
So, final question, and this should be the question. If any of the audience is struggling, this should be the question they're all listening for. Craig, how can people get in touch with you? How can they connect with you? What's a way they could get more involved in your world?
Sure. So visit my website, mindfulhabithelp.com. There's a number that you can call to set up an appointment with me. There is a free training, and there's a link to my podcast. The name of my podcast is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I'm going to have you on soon, Vince. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And visit the website, call the number, and set up the appointment.
I love it. Well, Craig, this has been such an insightful conversation. Guys, listen, you already know we've talked about it on multiple episodes. I say it often enough. I really don't like most coaches. I think they suck. I personally invited Craig to be on the show because I loved what he was doing. I thought he was great. And if any of you guys are struggling with this, please reach out to him. he'll help you. I think he'll help you. And if he doesn't help you, come back and I'll retract this. But I'm pretty sure this guy's got your back. So check it out, see what he's doing, or at least snag the free resources. And tune in for another episode of the 1% podcast. On the next episode, well, we'll be bringing you another phenomenal guest. So stay tuned, like, share, follow, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you thought of this episode under the show. And of course, if you have questions, reach out with them. We got your back. For now, I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And that was Craig, everybody. See you later.
Bye everybody.